Looks like we're online. Welcome, everyone. I now call the May 13th, 2025 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, we will take a moment to take roll call of all the City Council members by position number. Please say here when the clerk calls your name. City Clerk.
Thank you. Councilmember Zorns?
Here.
Mayor Thompson? Councilmember Alderks?
Here.
Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Menke? Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present with the exception of Mayor Thompson and Councilmember Menke. And I believe Mayor Thompson will be arriving late.
Thank you, City Clerk. Before we continue with the rest of the agenda, I'd like to reiterate some guidelines. For remote meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. Mute your microphone when not speaking, and for council attending remotely, use the raise hand feature when you wish to speak, and we don't have anyone attending remotely. Or council members. Meeting agenda approval. It's not like I've done this a couple of times before. Are there any changes to the agenda? All right, so public engagement opportunities. Apply to serve on the Salary Commission. The City of Bothell is now accepting applications from Bothell residents interested in serving on the Salary Commission. Applicants should apply online by May 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. To learn more, go to bothellwa.gov/SC-2025. And we have the pop-up dog park is returning. The pop-up dog park at Bothell Landing is back starting May 23rd, just in time for Memorial Day weekend. Open through September. This seasonal off-leash space is perfect for both small and large dogs to play all summer long. To learn more, go to bothellwa.gov pop-up dog park. All right, now we're at proclamations, and I will take the first one. It's the recognizing our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander heritage folks, and it's recognizing their month. Whereas the month of May is nationally recognized as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander AANHPI Heritage Month, a time to celebrate the cultures, histories, and immeasurable contributions of these vibrant and diverse communities across the United States, and whereas we recognize that the AANHPI is not a single story but a collective of many spanning over 50 ethnic groups and hundreds of languages, traditions, and histories, each with unique roots and lived experiences, and whereas in Bothell and beyond, AANHPI individuals have enriched our city as neighbors, educators, artists, caregivers, scientists, small business owners, and leaders, often in the face of systemic discrimination, xenophobia, and cultural erasure. And whereas we honor the generations of AANHPI community members who have shaped our local history and continue to build a more just, inclusive, and vibrant future despite legacies of exclusion, anti-Asian violence, and colonial harm, and whereas the City of Bothell is committed to building trust and authentic relationships with our AANHPI community, ensuring that our programs and policies reflect values of equity, belonging, and visibility for all. Now, therefore, I, Rami Alcabra, on behalf of Mayor Mason Thompson, do hereby proclaim May 2025 as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in the City of Bothell, and call upon all residents to deepen their understanding of AANHPI histories and cultures, to listen with care, and to actively reject any reject anti-Asian xenophobia, hate, and discrimination in all forms. And I believe we have Ryo Wu here to accept online.
Yes, thank you so much, Deputy Mayor, and hi, everyone, and thank you to City of Bothell. Really happy to be here. As a child of Taiwanese immigrants and also as someone who's worked closely with artists and storytellers in the community, I just want to say that NHPI communities are not just a monolith. We're incredibly diverse, complex, and rooted in resilience. And like the proclamation said, we're your neighbors, we're business folk, we're folks that everyone just kind of has in their lives. And excited to share that next month. I'm curating an exhibit here at City Hall Gallery called Wildest Dreams. And this is generously funded by the Bothell Arts Commission. And it shares a lot of NHPI stories as well as other immigrant stories beyond the Asian diaspora. And the art's going to be on view from June 6th all the way through our closing celebration on Saturday, June 28th, which is 2 to 5 p.m. And we're going to have some performances, live music. There's going to be an art market, and you'll have a chance to meet some of the artists. So I really hope to see some of you there. And thank you so much for holding space for this.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And now we have our next proclamation, which will be recited by Council Member Dodd.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm proud to read the proclamation for Affordable Housing Week. Whereas all people should have access to safe, healthy, and affordable homes within communities that provide opportunity, and whereas the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as housing on which the occupant is paying no more than 30% of gross income for housing costs, including utilities, and whereas studies have found that each $100 increase in median rent results in a 15% increase in homelessness in metro areas and a 39% increase in homelessness in nearby suburbs and rural areas. And whereas everyone benefits from affordable housing, including the people who reside in these properties, their neighbors, businesses, employers, and the community as a whole. And whereas, united to raise public awareness, people, organizations, and communities throughout King County are participating in local Affordable Housing Week activities to elevate the critical need to create healthy communities with ample affordable housing. And whereas the City of Bothell endorses the goals, objectives, and purposes of Affordable Housing Week. Now therefore I, not Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim the week of May 12th through 16th, 2025 as Affordable Housing Week, and in doing so, firmly recommit the City of Bothell to ensuring that all people in Bothell live with dignity in safe, healthy, and affordable homes. I believe we have folks from both Imagine Housing and Plymouth Housing here to accept.
Thank you, City Council. It's my honor to accept this proclamation on behalf of Imagine Housing. Imagine Housing believes that everyone deserves a safe, permanently affordable home. Imagine Housing owns and operates 15 apartment communities in East King County, soon to be 16. Under construction here in the city of Bothell is Sama Senior Apartments, which will have 76 permanently affordable apartments for seniors. All of the folks who live at Imagine Housing qualify as making less than 60% of the area median income. We have veterans, seniors, folks exiting from homelessness, and we believe that it is important that every family has an opportunity to stay in the community where their kids can be kids, where seniors can age in place, and thank you again.
Hello, my name is Dennis Sills. Thank you, City Council, for this proclamation. Also, thank you to NUSA, who invited me to join this event today. I work for Plymouth Housing. Plymouth Housing provides permanent supportive housing to more than 1,300 formerly homeless adults across King County. But more importantly, I'm a resident of Bothell, and I'm very excited to be here today to share in this proclamation. Plymouth is expanding to meet the need. We're opening a building in Bellevue and are working with King County and Kirkland. It will soon be breaking ground in Redmond. All of these apartments can serve residents of Bothell and the rest of the county. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather. It's very challenging and time-consuming to develop affordable housing. We can all benefit from finding ways to help develop housing and affordable housing more quickly. I'm very thrilled about the Imagine Bothell Comprehensive Plan. I want to thank you for passing that and looking to build more than 12,000 new homes by 2044. It's a 20-year vision for the future of this town, and it's something that I think my family and my son will be very proud of. Affordable housing is very important to the residents of Bothell. My son's favorite teacher at Bothell Kindercare had to move home when she broke up with her partner and couldn't stay and afford housing here. And my family was only able to afford housing here because of other family members. We believe at Plymouth, and I believe personally, that everyone deserves a safe and dignified home. So thank you for supporting this proclamation.
And did you want to take a picture with the council? Oh, I thought you were talking to Amanda. I'm not used to this, as you can see. Now, the final proclamation, Mental Health Awareness Month, will be read by Councilmember Aldrichs.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Whereas May is designated as Mental Health Awareness Month to raise public awareness, reduce stigma, and promote understanding of mental health issues, and whereas in Washington State, approximately 300,000 adults experience serious mental illness each year, and nearly half of adults have reported symptoms of anxiety or depression. And whereas youth mental health is a growing concern, with 20% of Washington adolescents aged 12 to 17 experiencing a major depressive episode annually. And whereas access to mental health care remains a challenge, with only 16.2% of the state's mental health care needs being met. And whereas mental health challenges disproportionately affect historically marginalized communities, including people of color, LGBTQIA+ people, and low-income populations who often face additional barriers to accessing culturally competent mental health care. And whereas the City of Bothell is committed to supporting mental health initiatives, promoting awareness, and ensuring that all residents, regardless of their background, have access to the care and understanding they need. Now, therefore, I, Jenny Aldrichs, on behalf of Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim May as Mental Health Awareness Month in the City of Bothell, joining advocates and communities across the country in promoting mental health awareness and supporting those affected by mental health conditions. And we have here to accept this proclamation, Tanvi Arekapudi. Did I say that right? Awesome. Well, I'll bring this to you. And would you like to get a picture with council afterwards? Great.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and community members. My name is Tanvi Arekpudi, and I'm deeply honored to accept this proclamation today on behalf of our community and all those who continue to champion mental health every single day. Mental health, as we all know, isn't just a personal issue, it's a community one. And tonight, as we stand together to recognize Mental Health Awareness Week, we're also standing for every child who's felt unheard, every teenager who's felt invisible, and every family struggling to see the next day without hope or help. As a 16-year-old teen mental health advocate, international best-selling author, creator of the Emotion Cards deck, and founder of the Uplift Teens Today nonprofit, my mission is to help my peers in their day-to-day life know they're not alone, but give them strategies to help them through those struggles. I recently founded Nexus Mental Health Hub for schools and for communities, a free vetted resource made by youth but for all to find strategies, information about mental health, anonymous peer stories, and more in one space without the barriers of all the different mental health resources. There's a lot of barriers like stigma, the cost, and the time commitment, but the goal of Nexus is to have it on an online website, easy to access anywhere, anytime. Nexus has now, proud to say, reached over 800,000 students and community members nationwide. The goal is to spread it to the 80 million students out there. And I'm proud to say that it's really rooted in the belief that we heal better together, working together. Also, we partner with organizations like Harvard's Medical Center, Boston's Wellness Lab, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Healthcare Authority, and University of Washington to do research about it. But this work really started from a personal space. Like many teens, I faced anxiety and moments of feeling like no one would ever understand me. When I was 9 years old, I moved from Ireland to the US. It was a big move, from feeling like the world loved me to feeling completely invisible. I struggled to fit in, and the culture shock really made me feel like no youth or no adult would ever understand the perspective I'm in and the struggles that I'm going through. I went from coloring and laughing in classrooms to battling with panic attacks in silence, struggling to take the next breath because of the pain it caused me and how terrified I was. The anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, stressed, all hit me like a storm at once, and I did the best thing I knew. I looked at the others in my life and how they were dealing with these, but I saw everyone being happy all the time, putting a smile on their face. So I thought maybe if I could cover up those emotions and act happy, then I would feel less alone. So I went on like that, silently trying to survive what I couldn't name. But that changed when I finally, after months of struggling, told my parents what was going on. It was an awkward wait, but the first thing that they said was, "You're not alone," a message that still sticks with me till this day. But then my mom also suggested a quick mindfulness technique, and it really helped me to feel calm, a calmness I didn't feel in a long time. So that's really when I realized I had two big realizations. The first one is I was not alone in my struggles. There's millions of youth going through different mental health challenges every day, like stated in the Proclamation through the statistics, and actually even more stats show that 87% of youth face a daily mental health challenge, and over 50% of lifetime mental illness cases start by age 14. And with the mental health crisis going on, these stats are getting worse and worse. And so really through COVID, I realized that this was more than just my story. It was my peers' stories. The Zoom boxes, they were all struggling and faking that smile. So I knew there was something I could do about it. Maybe I could just share the true realizations I had, and maybe it could help them in a way that those realizations helped me. So that's what I did, and that led me to the work that I do today, and I'm really grateful for every person who supported me and all the work that all these organizations in the city of Bothell do. This proclamation tells our communities, our students, and every person who may be silently suffering that we see you. Your story matters, and we are here to listen, to support, and to, most importantly, build systems of care that are accessible, inclusive, and proactive. So I invite each of you, city council members, educators, families, and neighbors, to take action along with me. Let's bring mental health education into every single classroom and teach it like we do math, a regular part of the day. Let's open conversations around the dinner table. Let's connect our city school to the youth-led resources like Nexus, and ensure that every young person knows where to turn when they're struggling and feeling hopeless, like I once did. Together, we can build a future where asking for help is a sign of strength and where no one has to walk their journey alone. Thank you so much for this recognition and for standing with us in this mission to break the stigma one person at a time, united. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stanley. Can you tell us what the URL is for the Nexus?
Yes, so we're actually working to launch Nexus for the city of Bothell. More info coming there, but right now it's bothell.nexusforcommunities.com, or the generic one is nexusforcommunities.com.
Thank you. So this meeting is getting recorded, so people can go back and reference also. So thank you. And we'll come down to take a picture. We are at the public comment section. The city has accepted public comments in writing as well as accepted sign-ups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make notes of items requiring follow-up. City Clerk, do you have anyone signed up?
We do not have anyone signed up. However, if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to speak, please step to the podium and state your name. You'll have 3 minutes. And I see one person in the virtual audience, so I will panel them in so they can speak, and that is Mr. Mark Swanson. So. Mr. Swanson, can you hear me?
I can, City Clerk. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Greetings, all. I'd like to thank the city for the 2 engagement opportunities on May 3rd and May 10th, the home electrification workshop and the transportation workshop just this last Saturday. The sandwiches were awesome. So whoever's making decisions on what sandwiches to buy for those workshops, I commend them. I was able to, after asking Cameron, I was able to take a couple of those sandwiches with me after the workshops. And with my intermittent fasting regime, I was able to save a week and a half of grocery bills, no money out. And I'll be contributing that to my Puget Sound Energy electricity bill. Now, I'd like to remind the council that I was a silent partner in the first commercial wind farm that contributed electricity to the grid in Washington State, the very first one, way back in 2001. I became a silent partner back in 1994, and you can Google this, the Mariah Energy Group, LLC, which is no longer existing. But I was a very concerned about sustainable energy and very involved in wind farm electrical production. Now, Puget Sound Energy, they've only got 2 engineers between the 24 members of their board of directors and their executive board, both civil engineers, whose education, unfortunately, does not help in understanding the distribution or the generation of electricity energy. Puget Sound Energy has no expertise in electrification on their board of directors or their executive board. Now, on April 16th, Spain announced that they had achieved 100% decarbonization of their electrical grid. Now, that's wonderful, except for the fact that Spain pays 32 cents a kilowatt hour for their electricity. And this is the direction that Puget Sound Energy has chosen for us to go. And I don't need to tell the council or the city staff what 32 cents a kilowatt hour will do to the poorest, the lowest income residents of our city.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Your time is up. That is all I have, Deputy Mayor Alcabra.
Thank you, City Clerk. And now, City Manager report. Assistant City Manager Becky Range.
Hi, as mentioned, I am Becky Range. I'm the Assistant City Manager here, and I have the pleasure tonight of filling in for City Manager Stannert. We will jump right into our first two reports. We have one report from a valued community partner, Sound Transit, and then our second report will be from our own city staff. So as we prepare for Sound Transit to join us online, just a few reminders. Your council vision, one of your council vision areas is moving in and around Bothell. We couldn't even begin to think about this work if we didn't have a valued community partner, as in Sound Transit. So we thank them for coming tonight to give us a short update on Stride Bus Rapid Transit. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Rick Kapka and Ariel Taylor. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely, and good evening, members of the council. Just a quick audio check. Can you hear me? Excellent. Yes. Perfect. I saw some head nods. So I think that that's good. I am Ariel Taylor. I'm from Sound Transit. I lead up our government relations team here in East King County, including the great city of Bothell. And with me tonight, I have Rick Kapka. And Rick, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Ariel. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can.
I see a head nod. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Ariel. Rick Kapka. I work for Sound Transit. I'm the acting program executive for the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program. Happy to be here with you all this evening.
Yes, and I just want to take a few minutes right up front to also thank Bothell staff for that introduction. We are happy to be here tonight. We are happy to continue the partnership we have with the city of Bothell to deliver on the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program, which is got a lot of investments coming here to the city of Bothell. So just a quick update or a quick overview of what we'll talk about tonight. But we're just going to do a few quick slides just to reorient everyone who might be listening in the audience, just to who Sound Transit is, what we do, who we serve, of course, provide some agency updates, while also talking about the investments we're making here within the city of Bothell, specifically related to the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program, and also, of course, our new bus base, which we are also siting here in the city of Bothell. So quick overview, this map you see on the left-hand side, this is our system expansion plans. So everything you see, all this colorful spaghetti with all of these numbers associated with it on this map, this is a fully voter-approved, fully funded transit expansion plan. And as you can see, the gold line that runs along the east side of Lake Washington, you'll see right up there, the city of Bothell is at the intersection of two major Sound Transit investments in the Stride system, S2 and S3. We'll get to those, what those mean here in just a second, but this is our Sound Transit expansion plan. And just a little bit about how we got here. Sound Transit is a voter-approved agency, basically. All of our systems that we run and serve in the community is voter-approved, going all the way back to 1996. In 2008, we had our second ballot measure approved called ST2. And then, of course, in 2016, we had our biggest system expansion program passed, and that was ST3, which funded the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program, especially the investments here in the city of Bothell. But I wanted to highlight a few of the very exciting things that happened actually just this past Saturday. And I want to take a special moment to thank Councilmember Aldrich for her council update. I am on the newsletter distribution, and I saw the nice little shout out for the 2 new stations Sound Transit opened just this past Saturday in Redmond. That is adding 2 additional stations to the current 2 line, which operates between South Bellevue and now downtown Redmond. That includes downtown Bellevue, the Microsoft campus, everything in between. And we were very excited to welcome thousands of people on opening day. We don't have a firm head count on how many people joined us, but I can tell you it was in the thousands. We also had our federal delegation members join us, and it was quite the great day out there in Redmond. So if any of you joined us, thank you. It was a big day for East King County. Of course, up next, we have some very exciting system expansion plans. We will be, of course, connecting across Lake Washington. So we will be connecting the current 2 line that operates, like I just mentioned, between South Bellevue and the Redmond or downtown Redmond. We will be connecting that line across the I-90 floating bridge into the current 1 line operations that operate along the west side of Lake Washington. We are anticipating that to be the next opening, and we should start seeing the test trains on the floating bridge here very soon, which will be a very monumental day for those who ever drive along I-90. I'm sure you've seen a lot of that construction. We'll also be extending our service down to Federal Way in 2026. And of course, what I really want to hone in on tonight is we are going to break ground on the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program. Not only the actual capital program investments that we're making in the city of Bothell and Kenmore and those other communities along the north end of Lake Washington, but we will also be breaking ground on the bus space facility, which will house the Stride fleet. So there'll be lots of invitations coming your way for Stride groundbreakings later this summer. And then just quickly highlighting, we do have some Sound Transit agency leadership changes. We recently said goodbye to Jerron Sparman, who was our interim CEO. He has now retired, and he looks like he is living his best life in retirement based off of some photos I have seen. But we did welcome Dow Constantine, the former King County executive, to serve as Sound Transit CEO. He's been on the job about 1 month. And I'm sure we'll be making the rounds to visit all of the communities and cities to make sure that we're continuing to expand our program and our transit expansion under his watch. And with this, I'm going to hand it over to Rick to give a quick update on the Stride program.
Excellent. Thank you, Ariel. Good evening, council members. I am very thankful for the opportunity to be with you all this evening. So 2025 is going to be a really big year for the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program. We are going to be kicking off with some major construction projects, some in the city of Bothell, which I'll talk about shortly. So this evening, I'm just going to spend a few minutes giving you an overview of the Stride program. And then I am going to talk a little bit more specifically about Bus Base North, which Ariel alluded to a few minutes ago. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Ariel. Okay, so just a very brief overview. What is Bus Rapid Transit? Well, it's a high capacity transit system that provides fast, frequent, reliable, and high quality service. So the map you can see on the right represents the extent of our future Stride service, and it will run along the I-405 and the SR 522 corridors. Stride will specifically deliver efficient connections to 4 of our different light rail stations throughout the region. We're going to connect in Linwood, in Bellevue, in Shoreline, and Tukwila. So all throughout the map of the region. Stride will include dedicated bus lanes. We'll also have transit signal priority at key intersections to allow our buses to maneuver more efficiently through those intersections. We're also going to be providing pedestrian infrastructure improvements so that pedestrians can more easily access our stations that we will be constructing. And just for orientation, as you look at that map on the right, the stations that we will be putting in service are identified by the white dots throughout the map. We've got a total of 25 station locations that we'll be putting into service as part of this program. I do also want to mention we are going to be mobilizing Sound Transit's first fully electric bus fleet as part of the Stride service. Next slide, Ariel. Okay, so we have four main components of our Stride program. First, we have our bus operations and maintenance facility. You can see on the top right-hand side there. We call it Bus Base North. It's going to be located in Canyon Park. We'll talk about Bus Base North in a few slides. Then we have each of our service lines, starting with S1, which will run 17 miles along I-405 from Burien to Bellevue and back. Our S2 service line will run 20 miles along 405, connecting between Bellevue and Linwood. And then our S3 service line will run approximately 9 miles from Shoreline, Seattle, all the way through Bothell along the SR 522 corridor. And looking at the graphics on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see that our Stride service will offer a much faster trip along each of these three service lines when compared to our existing service that you can have today. Let's go to the next slide, Ariel. So this gives you a little feel for our stations and our buses. I like to say that our Stride stations will have a very similar look and feel to our light rail stations. They'll have similar amenities in terms of passenger information, fare payment. Most of our stations will provide a larger footprint than what you're used to seeing with bus stops. But they'll be long enough in many cases to accommodate 2 full buses at the same time. For the buses themselves, we're going to be running fully electric double-deck buses along the I-405 corridor, similar to what you see right now with the ST Express buses that run on the highway. And then for the SR 522 corridor, the S3 service line will be running 60-foot articulated electric buses. I do want to note we're also going to have a charging infrastructure located at the end of each of our service lines, and that will provide buses that are in layover the opportunity to charge the batteries up before they go back in service. Let's go to the next slide, Ariel. Okay, here's a brief picture of the overall status of the program in terms of cost and schedule. We baselined the project with the Sound Transit Board back in July of 2023. And by baseline, I mean that we essentially committed or confirmed the schedule by which we're going to deliver the project as well as the budget. And you can see those, the schedule and budget represented on this slide. As you can see, we are planning to complete our Bus Base North project by the end of 2027. And that's essentially going to lay the groundwork for us to be able to start our service lines soon thereafter, starting in 2028 and into 2029. Next slide. So we do have several important elements of the Stride program that are already under construction. For several years now, we've been partnering with WashDOT to build some of our important infrastructure along the I-405 corridor. WashDOT actually has 3 active design build contracts under construction right now along I-405. And I know the map is a little bit busy on the left-hand side, but you can see the 3 different WashDOT projects represented in green along 405. The photo on the top right is actually a recent aerial photo of the WashDOT's progress on their Northeast 85th project. And this particular photo shows the intersection of Northeast 85th Street and I-405. And that's where WashDOT will eventually be constructing the framework for our future inline BRT station for the S2 service line. So in addition to progress along I-405, we have started early construction activities for our stations. And in the bottom right-hand side, you can see an actual picture of a mock-up that we completed for one of our Stride BRT station shelters and pylons. So that gives you a realistic feel as to what our stations are going to look like. We completed that mock-up late last year in a factory setting, and that was done to help confirm quality and what we want out of our design. We can go to the next slide. Okay, here's a few slides on Bus Base North, and that is going to be our very first Sound Transit-led construction project. It'll be within the city of Bothell. Bus Base North is an essential component of our new program. It's strategically located in Canyon Park, which is in very close proximity to each of our 3 service lines. It's a 12-acre site. You can see it on the map here shown in the orange box. It's located off of 20th Avenue Southeast within the Canyon Park Business Center. The facility will serve as the operations and maintenance hub for Stride. It'll have a capacity of up to 120 buses. And in addition to serving our fully electric Stride fleet, Sound Transit does plan to transition some of our existing Sound Transit Express fleet over to this bus base as well. Next slide. So very briefly, the facility will consist of 3 main structures, which you can see summarized here on this slide. First, there's an admin and operations building, and that's going to serve as the operations and the dispatch center for Stride. The structure for the operations building is shown on the left-hand side of this rendering. It's closest to the frontage along 20th Avenue. The second main structure is the parking and service structure, and that's going to house both bus parking at the bottom level, along with fueling and washing capabilities for our buses. And then the top level of the structure will accommodate employee parking. And then the third structure, it's in the very back of this rendering on the right-hand side, is our maintenance building, and that will support both preventive maintenance and repairs for our entire Stride fleet. And let's go to the next slide, Ariel. And so here's another rendering. It's a little bit higher. You can see the maintenance facility a little bit better in this one. In terms of the status of the project, we completed design late last year, collaborated very closely with the City of Bothell staff to help get our conditional use permit in place last year. And early this year, we advertised the construction contract for bid. Last month, we received 3 good bids. All 3 were under our engineer's estimate and within our budget. Very happy about. And we are scheduled to take this contract before the Sound Transit Board this month to get approval to award the contract to the lowest responsive bidder. We are also working very closely with City of Bothell staff to complete the construction permitting, and we do plan on getting into construction early this summer. So really looking forward to breaking ground. And with that, Ariel, if you can go to the next slide, I'm going to hand it back over to you to wrap.
Sure, of course. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes just to talk about what we're going to be doing next here at Sound Transit for the Stride program. Like I mentioned earlier at the top of the presentation, we're going to be breaking ground on a lot of the work that will accompany and is vital to having the Stride service and it be running as frequently and as fast as it will be here in the future. So not only will we be breaking ground on Bus Base North, but also the S3 corridor in particular, that portion along State Route 522 and Bothell Way. So be on the lookout for some invitations from us for some groundbreaking ceremonies. Of course, we'll also continue our community engagement throughout 2025 and throughout the project. We want to make sure the community is aware of what we are doing and what is coming. So not only are we going to be doing business outreach, in fact, we just hired a person who will be doing dedicated business outreach for the Stride program. Her name is Kimber. If you haven't met her, I'm sure you will soon. But we are also going to be conducting some online open houses for members of the public to be able to come on and see what is going to be happening and get more information as construction gets underway. Of course, you can always, anybody who has any questions can always email us at brt@soundtransit.org. We're happy to answer any questions from the public. And of course, always happy to take some questions from you all tonight. And that is our last substantive slide. And we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ariel and Rick. Council members? Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. Thank you both for the updates. This is a little boring, but friendly reminder that most of our council has a full-time job, at least one, in addition to this. So the more notice you can give us on those groundbreakings, the more likely we're able to have someone there to represent. And we would love to do that, I'm sure.
100%. The minute I know when we're looking at breaking ground, I'll make sure to send the invite out.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Kurd?
Thanks for the presentation. I'm really excited and have been since it was initially announced and we saw Bothell on the map a long time ago and we voted. I've got a couple of quick questions about the bus base north. One being, I imagine there's a lot of charging infrastructure going in there. And can you speak a little bit to the cooperation with Snohomish PUD or the City of Bothell in terms of making grid improvements or resiliency there?
Sure, I can touch on that very briefly. Yeah, we've been as we've advanced our design for Bus Base North, we started coordinating with SNOPUD and of course City of Bothell. Some of the early work we did with SNOPUD was to verify that the existing electrical grid does have the capacity to service our new bus base and the needs, especially with the electric charging infrastructure that we need. So we've gone through that process with with SNOPUD, and we confirmed with them that they have what we need in the near term. We've also done some work where we're kind of mapping out the future full capacity of the bus base north. We are going to start out with, I want to say, on the order of 48 electric buses. That's going to be on day one when we start running buses. Eventually, over time, we are looking to ramp up the number to 120. So the demand isn't going to be, the full capacity of the future build out. So we've made SNOPUD aware of that, and we'll be working with them to address any additional capacity needs we have as we go forward.
That's great. Thanks. And then about the buses, I know these are really complicated machines, and they're not made by just anybody. And so I know that federal procurement really makes up a majority of these bus producers. And with all the uncertainty at the federal government level, I'm wondering if these estimates that you have for revenue service are kind of contingent on more certainty from the federal government, or how are the status of some of the federal funds? I mean, is that something that we should be worried about or incorporating into our own kind of federal outreach as a city?
Great question.
Take that, Rick. Yeah.
I'll take it, Ariel, and please chime in if you got something additional to add. I'll say, yeah, Sound Transit has, since the beginning of the year, has definitely done a lot of work to understand, what may be changing at the federal level. I can say for the Stride Bus Rapid Transit program, there isn't a significant amount of federal funding. We do have some federal funds that are supporting us down at our Renton Transit Center. We do also have some federal funds that are involved with the buses. A majority of the construction of the infrastructure we're going to be building out, a majority of that $2.35 billion budget is not coming from federal funds. But we have doubled back and made sure that all of our contracts that we are putting out on the street are compliant with current federal requirements and are consistent, so that we don't put any of our funding in jeopardy. And Ariel, do you have anything else to add?
I think that is, you hit it right there, Rick. I will just assure the council that the good news about the Stride program and where it is at in what we call project development, is that it is about ready to break ground, which means we already have the funds dedicated to it. We are not at risk of losing any of those federal funds for the capital program right now, or at least for the Stride portion of our agency's capital program. So that should hopefully help take some of the pressure off of any anxiety of what might happen to the STRIDE program. I do think that Sound Transit will, we do rely on a lot of federal support for a lot of the rest of our, especially light rail expansions, including TIFIA loans. We have the grant agreements that we enter into with the Federal Transit Administration for some of those really hefty, like think about like needing to bore a new tunnel type of projects. All of those projects are probably going to be a little bit riskier right now with the state of the federal government and just the what's the word I'm looking for, the unknowns of what might be happening here in the next few years. But the STRIDE Bus Rapid Transit Program, as of right now, is well funded, well underway, and we're about to break ground, which is very good news.
Thank you. That's really comforting.
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I don't have anything else to add to this. Thank you so much for the update, Ariel and Rick, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. And
Thank
just
you.
one more, just quick shout out to your staff, who is amazing to work with. Everyone at the City of Bothell has been absolutely wonderful in helping us get this program off the ground and in the ground, I should say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Next up is Climate Action Plan Update, Assistant City Manager.
Yes, so as community development makes your way to the table, our next update is concerning our climate action plan. Over the last year, Bothell has really made a lot of progress in our climate planning, and many people in our community are excited that we are doing our very first climate action plan. So here for a quick update, I'd like to welcome Cameron Colvin and Emily Nielsen from Community Development.
Thank you very much. Give me 1 second to get the PowerPoint pulled up here. Okay. Make sure that's sharing. My name is Cameron Colvin. I'm a long-range planner from the Community Development Department. I'm joined by Emily Nielsen, our Climate Action Fellow. So we'll be providing just a brief update on the Climate Action Plan, some of the work that's been going on since we last chatted with you all back in January, and sharing some of the preliminary results from our initial community survey and community-wide greenhouse gas inventory. So since we last spoke in January, we've been conducting a lot of the background research and initial community engagement to help inform the direction of the plan. So we've been working closely with Cascadia Consulting as part of our partnership with K4C to conduct both a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which measures citywide emissions, as well as our first municipal greenhouse gas emissions, which looks more closely at those associated with municipal operations. In addition to the survey that we're going to share results from tonight, we've also tabled out a couple of recent events, including Innovation Lab High School's annual March for Climate and UW Bothell and Cascadia College's Earth Day Fair, which we're great to attend. And so in terms of project timeline, we are still anticipating getting a draft out by probably mid to late June timeframe, and having that for review ahead of the summer recess, and then coming back into in the fall after we've had a chance to collect public comment, make some revisions for consideration at the end of the year for adoption. And with that, I'll hand it over to Emily to talk more about the survey.
All right, good evening, Council. There we go. So back in January and February, we ran a community-wide survey to better understand local priorities and concerns related to climate change. The survey was hosted on engagebothell.com and was distributed throughout the city website, social media, word of mouth with help from our advisory committee members and flyers, and we received 193 responses. We asked participants to voluntarily share some demographic information, and based on that data, we saw that some populations were over or underrepresented in the survey results compared to census findings. So some populations that were underrepresented in the results include those who identify as Asian or Asian American alone, people who speak a language other than English at home, renters, and people younger than 18 years old. Diving into the responses, 95% agreed that it is important that the city take proactive measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we invited people to explain their answers to that question. Should Bothell's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals be less ambitious, on par with, or more ambitious than the state goals? And across the board, we heard that measurable, cost-effective, and impactful actions are most valued. The community most supports climate actions that improve quality of life and help reach other community priorities, such as improving ecosystem health and public health, affordability, and connected communities. There was also an emphasis on holding other entities accountable. While people recognize that individual and citywide actions are very important, respondents also emphasized that the city should do what it can to hold other polluting entities accountable and advocate for change at a regional, state, federal, and even global level. Many respondents emphasized that the city should act with urgency and prioritize taking intentional actions to do our part to reduce emissions and create a more livable Bothell for the good of current and future generations. So overall, we found that cost, lack of information and resources, and limited ability to make property changes were the most common barriers to EV adoption and energy efficiency, as well as electrification upgrades. In terms of electric vehicles, most potential future EV users indicated that they would prefer to charge an EV at home, but many lack the ability to do so. And lastly, one of our major key findings is that people were most interested in learning about home solar, energy efficiency, and electrification measures, and zero waste actions. Respondents were also interested in more volunteer opportunities related to climate and ways to support creative community-led projects. So how are we using these results? The results are being used to develop our strategies and actions list for the Climate Action Plan and inform the development of a prioritization framework to help us decide which strategies and actions to focus more on. They will guide education and engagement priorities, and they already have. For instance, you heard about the workshops that we hosted this last Saturday and the Saturday before that, and we also heard lots of people don't know where to go for information about resources in the survey, so we built the Climate Action website on the City of Bothell, and that centralizes resources from internal and external sources with resources about building energy efficiency and electrification, transportation, zero waste, and community action. So feel free to check out that Climate Action page on the City of Bothell's website. And that is all I have for now.
Thanks, Emily. One thing I'll add to that also is we did record the presentation portions of the workshops the past 2 weekends, and so we are hoping to get those up on their website shortly, but a lot of good information there from representatives from PSE and SNOPA about available incentive and rebate programs, and then as well presentations from our various transit providers on similar to what you heard tonight about upcoming projects that are going to benefit Bothell and other ways to commute besides driving alone. So now I'll quickly run through our community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory results. So the previous inventories that were done were in 2019, and this most recent update covered the years of both 2022 and 2023. As mentioned, this was primarily conducted by Cascadia Consulting as part of our partnership in K4C. And one thing I will note is that this data is still being finalized. So if you see slight changes between what's in the report tonight and the draft plan, that's why. The methodology for these inventories uses the national industry standard and pulls from a variety of data sources, some of which are direct data sources, so things like PSRC's travel data and information on energy use from our utility providers, while some rely on national data sets and kind of scaling that down or models that are available. But it is based on the best available data that we have at this time. So as you all know, Washington has adopted a range of climate policies over the past couple of years to help us get to their goal of net zero emissions by 2050. Those actions will get us a majority of the way there based on estimates, but there is additional action needed at the local level to help us reach those goals. So looking at our greenhouse gas emissions for 2022 and 23, total emissions were about 561,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So just to put that in perspective, if you look at the per capita numbers, that's roughly equivalent to a person driving about 28,000 miles in a standard gas vehicle. If you look at the pie chart to the right there, it shows the breakdown of emission sources by sector. So the pie sections in green reflect transportation-related sectors, including on-road vehicles, off-road equipment, as well as aviation. And then the sectors in blue reflect energy sources like electricity and natural gas. And then a much smaller proportion of total emissions are from solid waste generation and compost. When we look at core emissions, so the areas where local governments typically have the most control or influence over, these make up about 75% of total emissions. So this includes electricity sources, natural gas, on-road vehicles, and solid waste. As mentioned, we do have data sets now for 2019 through 2023, so we can start to look at trends over the past couple of years. Obviously, major shifts and events happened with COVID and the pandemic in 2020. But really, when we look at Bothell's numbers over the past 4 years, not a whole lot has changed, at least in terms of transportation and other sectors, but we have seen a decrease in the built environment and energy usage. So in talking with our consultant, really what explains some of that decrease over the past couple of years has really been an increase in participation in some of the renewable energy credit programs like PSE's Green Power Program, where people can pay an additional amount to contribute to renewable energy projects in the region. And a lot of that is happening on the commercial and industrial side over the past few years. When looking at transportation, which made up 59% of total emissions, those only increased by about 1% over the past 4 years. And then solid waste made up 1.5% and saw an increase of less than 1%. And then finally, looking at refrigerants, those made up about 5% of total emissions. And those saw a slight increase. There's not a lot of great available data for refrigerants, so this relies on kind of national data sets and scaling that down. So that may reflect population changes at that level. Any questions?
Thank you for your presentation, Councilmember Aldrich.
This is really good information, and I really appreciate you bringing this forward to us and for all of the community members and staff who worked together to make this happen. I think the website that you mentioned, is it the climate action page under the sustainability section? Okay, great. I'll try to put that in my newsletter because it looks like it has some really great information on here, like even down to like what can you do section. So for people who want to take action. And I really appreciate all the work that has been put into this. I feel like the questions I was going to have were answered as you kept presenting. So thank you for anticipating those. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what you continue to put forward with this. So thank you.
Councilmember Zorns.
Thanks. Thank you for the presentation and the the layout of the data that you found, or data as you found it. I do have one question on how you got your aviation information, because my whole part of my neighborhood has commented that up until COVID, lots of planes going over to Everett and to SeaTac, and after COVID and since then, the airplane traffic has gone way down over at least this downtown part of Bothell. So how did you come up with your stats for aviation?
Yeah, great question. So the way that they go about calculating that is it is primarily based on SeaTac's available travel data. So we work with them to acquire that data and kind of proportion it out on an equitable household basis. So kind of on the basis that those with more income are likely flying more frequently. And so it's proportioned out to the various jurisdictions in King County based on population size and income levels to get those numbers.
So you were just going by estimating residents in Bothell who most likely would be flying and contributing to the aviation impact.
Right.
Not
yeah.
the actual planes going through Bothell. Okay.
Well, the total data we get from them, and then it kind of we have to make some assumptions about how much of that is coming from each of the various King County jurisdictions based on population size.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thank you. Kind of related to that, it sounds like SeaTac distributed across King County. There's Painfield. Like, how does that cover the whole city? Can you talk about that methodology a little bit?
Yeah, that was a question we brought up with the consultant. So at this stage, Painfield numbers have not been included, but that is something we could potentially look at and work with them to get that data as well to add on to. But since this was primarily focused on King County residents, we do know that there is travel up in Painfield. Sometimes that's more convenient to get in and out of. So that may be something we look at in the future to incorporate and add on to.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Kurt?
Thanks for the presentation. This really interesting data. I'm wondering what the status of the other analysis that you're doing right now, which is just for the City of Bothell's organization.
Yeah, so we have completed the municipal inventory, and we actually just got the results last week. So not quite enough time to really go through them and get it into a packet for you all, but hopefully we'll be able to share out more details about that shortly.
Great. I think that's really important, and I'm glad that we're doing it for our organization so that as we try and hold others accountable, we can hold ourselves accountable too, and that's transparent.
All right. Well, thank you both for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Now we're at the final section of this section. Council committee reports, council committee reports, community reports, and conversation. Council members. So, it's open, so
okay,
jump in,
thank
please.
you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a reminder that tomorrow is the Affordable Housing Week Lunch and Learn hosted by NUSA. It is both virtual and there is a in-person opportunity to watch and join community members and participate at Bothell United Methodist, and that's at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So since we honored Affordable Housing Week, I thought I would just remind everyone that that is coming up. I have notes from the Eastside Transportation Partnership meeting that took place last Friday. The first big news was that the Redmond stations were opening May 10th, as we heard. I was able to attend and visit both stations. And it was just an exciting, it was an exciting atmosphere as those two stations opened. Let's see, relevant notes to share. PSRC presented the Regional Transportation Development Process, which is updated every 4 years. and a report is coming out. City leaders can influence the recommendations to PSRC through involvement on their boards and through Sound Cities Association. And also upcoming later this month is the General Assembly, which will be held May 22nd at the Seattle Convention Center. And I know that I am not able to attend, and so I'm wondering if anybody on the dais will be able to, if that's on anybody's radars yet. I believe it's a Thursday. Yeah. And then the federal legislative agenda, the Transportation Partnership is expected to see a decrease in federal transportation funding, and PSRC is asking cities to report if any of the jurisdictions are having trouble receiving federal funds or experiencing delays due to staff cuts. And since that is partly one of our challenges with appropriation, I'm wondering also if staff has been following up with PSRC, and is PSRC aware of what's going on with funding for the Whitening Project?
I actually don't have that information at this time, but we can certainly check into it and get back with you.
Okay. And then there was also a budget, state legislative update that the budget was balanced through project delays, including our multimodal shared use path on 102nd, as well as new revenues. And some good news is that the Regional Mobility Project grant was funded. And then there was also a moment taken to honor Senator Bill Ramos, who recently passed away. He was instrumental for his work on Move Ahead Washington. And so those are the notes I have from Eastside Transportation Partnership. Thanks.
I mean, it's like conversations too, so please jump in.
I have a conversation
Mix and
topic.
match.
This has been on my mind, and I'm like, sometimes I feel silly, and sometimes I feel like we got to talk about this, or at least has to have an honorable mention. Being a firstborn, when you're on the road, you should obey the rules of the road, right? And within a margin. And something that has just frustrated me is with the work on 522, construction work. It says 35 miles an hour, and everybody's not doing that until WashDOT decided to put up a speed camera. So if there is ever a time to thank WashDOT for doing that, because everybody seems to be seeing the sense of driving closer to 35 miles an hour. And with all those workers out there, that's a prudent thing to be doing. But anyway, I'm excited to see that in that it's there for a reason, and people should be heeding it.
Agreed. That was something Councilmember Kurd brought up a while back when WashDOT was here updating us. Anyone else? Going once? Councilmember Dodd.
Snuck in there. Council members Aldrich, Kurd, and I met with Assistant City Manager Becky Range on our sort of not council conversations topic, because we really don't want to call it that and confuse it with our agenda item. And we're looking at kind of a plan, and I wanted to check in with folks on if you were expected to attend 2 to 3, public events a year where there's 3-ish council members there to talk to folks who show up. Is that doable? It sounded doable to us. So throughout the year, 2 to 3 events where you'd be expected outside of a council meeting to be available to folks. They're pre-scheduled. We would have probably a topic that we would develop as the group of 3 in the meeting. I don't want to say meeting, event. And then there'd be like an appropriate staff member there. Like we wouldn't make our police chief talk about sewers, but it would be the right staff. So I guess I'm just checking in, like, does that sound doable?
He'll talk about bees.
It's true. We could have him talk about bees.
So what do you mean? You mean community conversations?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think you were at the North Creek Schoolhouse earlier this year.
Yes.
So just does 2 or 3 times a year sound doable for that?
We're looking at you.
Councilmember Aldrich and Kurt and I have already kind of agreed to that as the subcommittee, so we're checking with the other 2 of you.
I'm fine with it.
Candidly, I kind of have reservations about it because can I speak candidly?
Yeah, I mean,
Can you stop me? Yes, you can stop me. I've heard from people who have mixed reviews who've gone to that, and sometimes it becomes can be combative in the conversations, and there is a place for that. Do I have an appetite for it? That's a different question. Does that make sense?
well, kind of. And I think there's always a chance that someone will show up who has a lot of strong feelings about something. I think we've all experienced that. At the same time, we have people who don't quite know how to engage with us. So that the thought is, instead of the formality of a council meeting or the lack of two-way communication during public comment, just a place to be. I think my hope, personally, is the more we normalize being available as a group in an advertised way in the community that we, I know before I was on council, if I was at the grocery store and somebody was being a jerk to the cashier, I'd be like, hey, you don't get to do that here. So I also know that we have community members who fulfill that role. I think there was one at the library where we had a community member who and I heard about this, but I'm looking at Councilmember Aldrich because I heard it from Councilmember Aldrich, but who just showed up and moderated, which was great. So I understand that concern. I don't quite know how to address it, but I can bring that back to the subcommittee for sure.
I agree. It can get contentious, but it's also a growth opportunity for everyone to figure out how to have a conversation, disagree, but engage also in like adults engage. I'm just saying I agree with you, but it's also on us.
Thank you. I there's areas for growth for everyone everywhere. And what I would love to see council do is when people disagree with you, I'm using the general you, not you specifically, is the council endeavor to be not giving everybody the things that they want, but can we soften the edges of where we are directing this so that people feel heard? When people don't feel heard because the edges haven't been softened for them on their concerns, then it doesn't serve anyone well. It doesn't serve you well. It just reinforces, biases that people have about all of us here. So if we can endeavor as a group to find ways to incorporate all of the community in and soften some of the edges where people feel kind of heard, that would be phenomenal. We would be like a model government for other communities around us. So doing that and participating in that, you'll find little Councilmember Zorns asking and making noise for more accommodations if they're not happening. And I would expect the same thing to happen for me. When I go doorbelling and I talk to people, I'll tell people, hold our feet to the fire. It's not a fun place to be, but hold our feet to the fire. And I mean that, start to finish, hold our feet to the fire. And hopefully there's less of the heat than, accolades, but it's part of the job is having our feet to the fire.
Totally agree. I think that's part of why we're trying to get community events going on a set schedule. So I appreciate the feedback.
So you got the answer that you need? I don't know what the action item, yeah? Okay, cool.
Within reason. I'll have to follow up with Councilmember Menke and the mayor, but
sure.
Kinda.
Well, work in progress, I guess. So that's cool. All right, consent agenda. We did not pull anything, so I would take a motion to approve. Councilmember Dodd.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Curd. The motion to approve consent agenda has been made by Councilmember Dodd and seconded by Councilmember Curd. Does anyone wish to discuss? City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cobra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmembers Menke and Mayor Thompson absent and excused.
Excellent. So we have a public hearing right now on the 2026-2031 six-year transportation improvement plan. And I will ask Assistant City Manager Range to make the introduction.
Yes, thank you so much for that. So yes, just as a reminder, we do have an item tonight that requires a public hearing. So thank you so much for coming to the table. Just to kind of remind folks who may be watching the Transportation Improvement Program, it is a planning document that lists all of our transportation projects and programs. And as it needs to be updated each year, one of the requirements is that we hold a public hearing. And so we have staff here tonight to answer some questions, should we have some before we open the public hearing. Steve Morikawa, Deputy Director for Public Works, Transportation Planner Sherman Gong. Just as a reminder, on May 6th, staff did present the draft plan to the community and to council. And we'll have the public hearing tonight. And then if all goes well, it will be brought back to you for final approval on May 20th. And I might have just stolen all of your thunder, if you're okay with that. But I guess before we open the public hearing, do we have any questions for staff on anything that was presented in the past? All right.
I'll throw one out, which is there are some projects that community members are very excited to see implemented. And I guess this question is more along the lines of, is it really going to happen in like the excited way, not the scared way?
The capital facility plan typically is our kind of our funded plan. It's not our long-range 20-year plan. So usually if it's on the CFP, it has some sort of funding or an opportunity for funding. That's how we present it. So I think if the ones they're excited about are on the capital facility plan, then yes, our intent is to try to get through at least portions of the project within a 7-year period. Again, like with anything else, a lot of our funding comes from grants. So we have to be successful with the grants. Oftentimes, I mean, we do a really good job, but if we don't get the grants, what that typically means is the project gets delayed a little bit longer until we can find the funding. So I would say yes, if it's on the CFP, you should get excited about it. Hopefully we can get through the portion that we said we're going to get through in that 7-year period.
Great, thank you for that reassurance.
I'll open the public hearing. City Clerk, anybody here to speak?
We did not have anybody signed up to speak. However, I do have one person in the virtual audience, so I'm going to panel Mr. Swanson in to give him his 3 minutes. And if anybody's in the audience and wishes to speak to this, please step to the podium. Mr. Swanson, can you hear me?
I can, City Clerk. Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. In the last workshop this last weekend that I attended, which had been advertised as helping to formulate Bothell's Climate Change Action Plan, and this is also true for the week before, I did a quick check of the audience to see who was actually there representing Bothell residents. Well, in both times, and specifically this last time, there were only 2 people at both workshops that were Bothell residents. I was there both times. There are different people. One at the first workshop, Brian, he had an electrical engineering degree, good guy, born in Montana. The last one was Vishwa, another good guy, both agreed with my viewpoints. Now, regarding this engagement, as an engagement opportunity, it would have the classic easels, put the dots on, put the Post-its on. But the truth of the matter is, there are only 2 Bothell residents at both workshops. This last workshop regarding the Transportation Improvement Plan and helping to form Bothell's climate change future, they're only the inputs of 2 Bothell residents. And yet the easels were filled up with dots and whatever. So I question the methodology of the engagement. I also question the applicability of it as input to the climate change plan and what we're going to be doing for our climate change codified legislation that's going to be coming down the pipe. So I felt it was my responsibility as an engineer and as a Bothell resident who moved here in 1991 and rented for 3 years and then bought his home on Bothell West Hill in 1994 and has lived here ever since, that I should be there to input. I didn't input anything on the first one. The second one, I objected. Cameron and Emily did not really enjoy my questions, but they tolerated me, of which I am enormously thankful to Cameron for. We cannot be telling people that greenhouse gases are the cause of significant global warming, yet that's what they did that is not part of the fact base underlying global warming. Furthermore, we cannot be telling people.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Your time is up. Thank you. I don't have anybody else who wishes to speak.
Laura, right here.
Sorry, we do have one more. Please step to the podium, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Can you press the button in the center?
There. All right. Hello, I'm Kirsten Leatham, and I'm an avid transit user over many years. I've mostly been very impressed with the current state of Bothell Transit. I use it frequently to go into Seattle, and it's gotten much more frequent and faster, and also runs later at night, which I've been very pleased with. I'm personally car free, and many of my housemates and friends are also, and use either bicycle or transit, walking to get to college, to get to Seattle or Everett or other suburbs. And so I'm happy to see the next stages of transit improvement.
I believe that's all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I will close the public hearing. The city attorney wants me to use the pencil. All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Okay. You guys good? We are going to go on to ordinances and resolutions, and this resolution is to approve staff's recommendations for opioid settlement appropriations. And I'll call on Assistant City Manager Range to introduce the topic and the conversation.
Yeah, so this next item, we appreciate Finance Director Quan Wong and Human Services Coordinator Anand Manthapagada for coming and giving a quick update on the opioid spending plan. Just a reminder, you were presented with this information back on March 4th, and this is really just a high-level discussion so that we can make sure that the guiding principles and this spending strategy category areas that we have for the opioid settlement money is what you would like it to be. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff.
Deputy Mayor and City Council members. So tonight we are asking for your approval on a resolution adopting staff recommendations for appropriating the city's opioid settlement fund. So overall, this is close to a $3 million over the next 17 years coming into the city of Bothell as part of the state of Washington settlement with various drug companies. As of this date, we have about $680,000 in our bank. But instead of spending the money as they come in, we deliberately wanted to wait and see how much we have and be also strategic in allocating the money. Even though $3 million sounds a lot, that this is a restricted fund, so it is only applicable to the agreements that we established with the settlement. So just to give people a background or a refresher, between 2022 and 2024, you authorized the city manager to participate in various statewide opioid settlements with defendants. So we have done that. And then in July 2024, Human Services, we did a community needs assessment, and the findings were presented to City Council. So we tried to get a sense of what the community needed and how we could apply this settlement money. In March 2025, just a couple months ago, we presented our opioid settlement investment plan to you on that night. So today, we are coming back in front of you asking for your approval on our strategy to appropriate the city's estimated $3 million in settlement fund. So we have about a strategy focusing on 4 areas. So I'm going to touch on them at a very high level, and then Anand can answer your questions if you have any. So the first area of our spending strategy is to connect people with needs who need help to the help they need. We are focusing on probably more in the behavioral health area. In fact, later on in June, we'll be bringing to you with a potential award on a contract. But right now, we are still in negotiation stage to make sure that the funding that we will award is eligible for the settlement money. The second area is to support first responders like police and fires. They are the first responder to people on the streets, and we want to give them the tool that they need. The third area is addressing the needs of criminal justice involved persons. So this is kind of a partnership with the court, particularly with the community court program. Again, to have a more therapeutic approach to resolving criminal justice involvement individuals. And then the last area is to prevent the misuse of substance. So we are working with schools and our colleges to help make sure that younger people or other adults are not through education, through drug drug education, that we will prevent the misuse of the opioid substance. So this is kind of our overall approach. So do you have anything else to add? And we're happy to answer your questions as well.
All right, council members. Any questions? Council members Owens?
No question, but comment. I can make a quick comment, right? One, thank you for I guess I do have a question.
Yes.
The thought that you've put through this. You said that these 4 areas that you're looking to fund still have to go through a final approval. Is that correct? Did I understand you correct?
That is correct. We are allowing staff to do the homework to make sure that we have the flexibility according to what the City Council has given us. With one particular contract, we are still doing some work and will be presenting that contract to you later on for consideration.
Well, thank you. My only comment is you're right, $3 million doesn't go very far.
That's correct.
Over 17 years. I wish that we had a huge chunk of money so that we could create something, an immersive program that would get people out of an opioid addiction or help them avoid it. Can't do that with $3 million, but what you have here treats trying to head it off at the pass before an addiction starts to all the way to the spectrum of now we've got an addiction with consequences and problems, and how do we address that? So I appreciate the 4 areas that you're focusing in on and want to thank you for that work.
If I may add, so even though this is a small amount of money, this is part of a larger strategy as part of the national strategy to combat the abuse of this particular drug. So too many syllables. My goodness. Someone help me here. Okay, no, I'm going to work on this once we have our break. But having something that people can go, whether it's in Bothell or Spokane, or they're going to find something predictable that they can lean into. So thank you for that.
As a guy whose second language is, first language, 1.5 English, I completely sympathize. Councilmember Curd.
Thanks for bringing this forward, and I'll echo the thanks for working collaboratively across the city departments to come forward with these recommendations for families and individuals who are affected by opioid use epidemic in Bothell. I think this doesn't go far enough, but it is symbolic, and it's helpful first step for us as a community to recognize that the impacts that opioids have had on our community and others across the nation too. So I'll move to approve the resolution adopting staff's recommendations for appropriating the city's opioid settlement funds.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Councilmember Curd and seconded by Councilmember Dodd. Anyone wishes to discuss? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no.
No, sorry. My bad. Councilmember Dodd was late.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you for the thoughtful way that you've planned to spend this money. It's true that it's not an amount that erases the damage that was done, but it is an amount that hopefully can make the difference, and I think make a difference, rather. We're all struggling to speak tonight. But I really appreciate the way that there's a spectrum of support that's built into the way that we're spending this, so thank you for that.
All right. City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with Councilmember Menke and Mayor Thompson absent and excused.
Thank you. And now we are going to have a study session, but let's take a break until 8 p.m. and we'll reconvene down there. Welcome back. We are at our study session where we'll be talking about urban forestry management plan. And I will hand it off to Assistant City Manager Range.
And actually, I will just turn it right over to Jason Greenspan, our Community Development Director.
Hot potato, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. As you know, the City Council vision has a series of strategic priorities that the City Council adopted that relate to environmental stewardship. And one of those strategic priorities is to develop and implement a strategy to preserve and enhance our city's trees. We also know that in December of 2024, the City Council adopted our new comprehensive plan, which includes a series of growth targets, over 12,000 new housing units and over 18,000 jobs by 2044. So what better time to look at the state of our urban forest and our tree canopy goals? I'm here this evening with Cameron Colvin, who's been the project manager of our urban forest management plan, and he's here to provide an update on some of the data that we have specifically about our street tree inventory and the state of our urban tree canopy. Take it away, Cameron.
Thanks, Jason. So as mentioned, we'll be running through some preliminary data from our street tree inventory and tree canopy assessment. But before we get to that, I wanted to just provide a couple of quick project updates since it's been a while since we've talked in January. So what's been going on the past couple of months, in addition to the street tree inventory and tree canopy assessment, is some additional background research. So working with our consultant to look at our existing tree code and policies, as well as work across various departments, community development, public works, and parks, to look at current practices and kind of benchmark that against similarly sized jurisdictions. They've also been speaking with subject matter experts at the city to learn more about, current practices, permitting processes. So that, again, we can kind of look at our existing practices and where there may be opportunities for improvement. In terms of the project timeline, we're about midway through that yellow circle on your screen there. So now that we have a lot of the preliminary data completed for the inventory and assessment work, that is really going to lay the foundation for this plan. And so we'll be starting some of the public engagement work over the summer to share these results and start conversations around where we go from there. We anticipate having an initial draft for review shortly after recess, likely in the September-October timeframe. Okay, so diving into the data, just a little bit of a refresher from January. So the scope of this inventory was only within city limits, and it focused primarily on trees within public right-of-way, primarily areas that are maintained, so landscape strips, planters, and medians. I think I mentioned back in January that this is really to be viewed as kind of an initial phase to get a lot of data that we can learn and build from, and that this inventory can be expanded in the future to include other publicly maintained properties like our parks and open space as well. So at the time of the packets, we had collected 13,230 trees, which if you've ever wondered what that looks like, the map to your right there shows kind of the distribution and all of the groundwork that has been taking place. Each of the trees shown on that map was inventoried by a certified arborist from Planet Geo's field team. The information they collected on each of these trees is the location, species type, size, condition, noting any potential maintenance needs, and then as well documenting any potential infrastructure conflicts with nearby utilities or roads or sidewalks. So when we looked at the distribution of our existing street trees and species type, we found that about a third is made up of red maples. Typically, the industry standard is the 10-20-30 rule. So this is looking at trying to have no more than 10% of the same species, 20% of the same genus, or 30% of the same family. And so we did check the 30%, but obviously have a lot of red maples for that 10%.
When we look at size distribution, we found that a large portion of our existing street trees are kind of in that mid-range between 6 to 18-inch diameter, with a fewer amount of small trees or fully mature trees. And so the graph to your right kind of shows like an ideal size distribution and where our existing inventory falls. So again, you'll see we're kind of short in terms of the youngest trees and oldest trees, but we have a substantial amount of kind of medium range trees. A majority of the trees that were inventoried as part of this project were in good condition. So just for context, if a tree received an excellent rating, that would be kind of ideal condition, no dieback, no pest or disease, or dying limbs, anything of that sort. And then obviously moving down to critical or dead, where the tree is no longer able to thrive in that particular location. When we look at the maintenance priorities that were flagged, a very, very small percentage were actually recommended for removal. And the priority 1, 2, 3 mostly reflects the size of the trees. So a priority 1 would be larger, potentially more hazardous, whereas the priority 3s are small, relatively small trees. And a majority of the existing street trees just need kind of routine pruning and maintenance. Any questions on that portion before we move into the tree canopy assessment data?
I guess I can check a couple things off my list. When you brought up the 10, 20, 30 rule and the street inventory, I'm less concerned about natives, but like the red maple, they're gorgeous, but it gives me concern that there's so many of them that if a disease were to hit, it would wipe out a huge chunk of the function of what we want the trees there, besides looking pretty for, our fall days. So my question is there some thought that you mix up species of trees like within a block or along a road? Has there been any, did they make any recommendations about mixing up species to interrupt like a communicable disease that a tree might during a certain period, like birch a while ago, they took a big hit. So has there been any recommendations that they gave us on that?
Not yet. So Planet Geo is still working on the report and kind of taking this data and informing our next steps, which will be the recommendations and strategies. And yeah, this is looking at the entire inventory. So we haven't dived in on more of like a street by street level yet. But that is a good point to look at distribution and maybe breaking that up so there is more resiliency spread throughout.
Good, okay, thank you. I have other comments, but I'll save them for later. Thank you for that.
I have just a couple quick questions. The lack of age diversity showed less or fewer younger trees than we would expect, and that was under 6 inches. Do you know roughly how long it takes a tree to grow to 6 inches?
That's a good question that I think likely depends on the tree type and its planting location and conditions, but that's something we can look into and bring back more.
I'm more just curious, like when the times were when we planted and when we stopped, and kind of what went into that and all those things. And if that's not in scope, I totally understand.
Yeah, so the trees inventoried are a combination of those planted as part of private development, subdivisions, as well as a few like in our downtown area or other maintained areas where they were part of city capital projects or ones that we were more heavily involved with. But Sorry, I forgot. your
No, that
question.
was
Could you
actually
repeat?
really interesting. Like, where did these trees come from is another really interesting. Like, are these trees that were planted with development? And like, does this show that like, is this a map of when the development happened? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah, so we haven't gone into that level of detail yet, but it's something that we could look at, relying on available plan sets or other information.
Awesome. Yeah, knowing the why behind it is super interesting when it comes to stuff like this in terms of like how we can make better decisions and how we can do things differently so we can get better results, and just kind of knowing some of that why makes me curious. Another question, and this kind of piggybacked off what Councilmember Zorn said, is part of this study going to be recommending species to plant?
Yeah, so one of the deliverables we're hoping to get out of this is some right tree, right place guidelines. And as part of that, looking at what species we can incorporate as new plantings, what areas they would work best in, and really being able to put together something that's easily digestible that we can have available on the website and as a resource for community members to easily draw from and either plant in their backyard or for developers as they're putting together site plans.
Awesome. Thank you.
Would it be possible to get at some point, not like, obviously I don't think you just have this in your back pocket, like a map by like the age of the tree? Kind of, that's what the mayor said, made me think of that.
Yes, we can pull that.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're all a little intrigued by the tree size diversity slide. And I guess it's interesting to see these different targets and like, you said ideal size distribution. Like what goes into determining ideal size distribution, and like how is that unique to like our location?
Yeah, so it mostly reflects kind of the natural progression or a more resilient tree canopy. So you want kind of a spread of younger, more recent trees as well as your older, more mature trees. And so the recommendations from this slide are pulled from research that was done kind of in the 80s and 90s. That's become more of a industry standard in the urban forestry world.
Thank you. That's really, really useful. I figured there's a lot of science and data to back up those standards, and so I appreciate, even having the citations here on the slide. And then this is because there was a mysterious tree removal in my neighborhood. Have any trees been removed for maintenance yet based on the inventory, or is that?
Not based on the inventory, I don't know.
So it is some other reason that this tree mysteriously was removed, and it looks like the Director of Public Works might know.
Actually, we do have a little bit more information on that. We can share it with you after. It's really not associated with this particular project.
Have a quick question about maintenance. Obviously, it's well recognized that trees provide numerous benefits. There are also some costs, and the break-even point is like after 2 years, a street tree usually gives back more than it costs for maintenance. So I'm not really worried about what is our maintenance budget, but for the purposes of qualifying for state level assistance through DNR and different private equity foundations too that help support urban forestry projects in the Northwest. How much would you say we spend on maintenance?
So that was some of the information that we pulled kind of during the first initial months to relay to our consultants. So we do have that available. I just don't have it on hand. And a lot of this is what we pull together for our Tree City USA certification on an annual basis. It is split between multiple departments. If we're just thinking of street trees, that's going to be more Public Works in our streets department. But yeah, we can pull those numbers and share those with you.
I think that'd be really valuable, especially when we're trying to connect resources. Or I know DNR's Department of Natural Resources has a program for urban forestry initiatives in cities. I don't know if we qualify. We probably do. We probably spend more than an average jurisdiction on trees because we have so many. Yeah, I understand that they provide annual support for cities that qualify, that have an urban forestry plan, and so this work is really, really valuable. And if we can leverage some of our ongoing maintenance to qualify for more funding, that'd be great.
I think we actually got something in our email today about that from Snohomish County. I'm hoping that that also goes to staff and that's on staff's radar.
I think I did see a opportunity for funding from, I think it was from SNOPUD.
Yeah.
So we'll look further into that.
Cool, thank you.
I forwarded that to Kyle for when he gets back.
Yep. Any other questions on the inventory?
Okay, I don't know exactly when to ask this question, so the time is now. Some places have street trees that have like uprooted the sidewalk. Have we figured that out as a city? I don't know if that's just we planted the wrong tree or weird stuff happened. There was a mini localized earthquake at that tree. Like, I'm being funny, but like, will we get good data through here that will help us figure that out, or do we already have a handle on that?
Yes, this will provide a lot of good data on that. So one of the things I mentioned that they were kind of noting is any existing conflicts with nearby infrastructure. So we'll have that as a basis to kind of identify, okay, where are there existing issues? It is something that's been on the city's radar. I went out with our Public Works team a couple months ago to tour some neighborhoods that had some issues with very small planting strips that just went in as part of the initial development, and now those trees have matured and are causing conflicts with sidewalks and roadways. So it is something on our radar, and one thing that we'll be incorporating as part of this plan and getting more detailed recommendations on.
I appreciate it. I think two sort of adjacent questions. One is, in our current development regulations, do we address like the size of the planting strip and like what you can kind of plant there to encourage none of that as time goes on? Is that kind of...
I think that is built into our construction and design standards currently. I don't know if Aaron could maybe provide more detail on that. Or
Yeah, we can confirm that we do have standards that speak to that. Often it relates to if it's along an existing right-of-way, what kind of space is available for that. And often we also have our multimodal transportation priorities where we have to worry about how we can fit all of our goals into with a right-of-way, whether it's a bikeway or other infrastructure. So I can find out further about what that standard is for you.
Okay, and I'm mostly just curious so that like we see the problem and we don't let it keep happening. And then the other thing is all the ones that were inventoried as interfering with the infrastructure, is there a chance of that kind of being rolled into a project that gets prioritized at some point to fix that up? I that might be more of a public works questions, and I'm fine with a nod maybe. Okay. Maybe follow up another time.
We're still in the early stages of, just getting this data and kind of digesting it. So those are conversations that will be had.
Okay, yeah, and it's not an emergency, like the sidewalks have been that way, where they are that way, so, but that would be cool, thank you.
Okay, wait, one more question, sorry. So when this whole conversation, I've been thinking about right-of-way, trees, and it's Bothell right-of-way, but Washout right-of-way, trees aren't included in that, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so there are like significant other acreage of trees and canopy cover that aren't included in these numbers but are still within the public realm. And does WashDOT have tree maintenance agreements with the city? How if a tree falls in the woods, who has to pay for it?
Great question. Yeah, I believe WashDOT maintains anything within their right of way, and I believe we do have agreements with them regarding that. But yep.
Yeah, we can confirm what the procedure would be should that occur. But I will clarify that when we move on to the tree canopy data, we were able to inventory more broadly the overall tree canopy in the city, and it does include areas that are beyond just the city's right of way.
Shall we continue, or maybe some of the things, the questions will be answered?
Okay.
Robbie's like, quiet, move on.
So moving on to the tree canopy assessment. So this looks at tree cover citywide. So not just right of way, but all land within the city. And for this particular update, we did include the UGA. So if the outline of the city looks a little weird, that's because it includes the urban growth area. This update was done using 2023 data, which is the most recent available. Our previous inventory was done back in 2015. So this was to give us a good baseline to start looking at trends over the past couple of years. So when we look at citywide, our current urban tree cover is about 44% of total land area. And when we look at just the UGA itself, it's about 35%. One of the other things that our consultant looked at as part of this effort was, in an ideal scenario, and if we were to implement a planting plan, how much actual space is available for new plantings? So this kind of rules out existing development and impervious surfaces, any environmental constraints, easements where we might not, want any conflicts. And so looking at all that, there's about 15% more land area that could be available for new plantings. The next couple of slides, so we took the total tree canopy distribution and then broke that down into a couple of different geographies so that we could see that at different scales. So the first is looking at it by census block. So this gives us an easy way to look at areas where there is both a lack of tree cover, and we can compare that with demographic data as well. We looked at tree cover by sub-area. I apologize, that's relatively small on your screen there. But in terms of sub-areas, the ones where we see the highest tree canopy cover are Shelton View, Fitzgerald, Juanita, and a lot of these areas have either less dense development or naturally occurring forests in those areas primarily. When we looked at it by zoning, this was so that we could have more of a direct tie to our impervious coverage limits and development regulations. So when we look at it by zoning, this also kind of lines up with general expectations that our parks and open space, as well as our residential conservation, would have the highest percentages. And then we see that decrease as you move kind of up in density all the way to downtown, which had some of the lowest tree canopy coverage. And then the hexagon maps that you saw in your packets are kind of for fun, but they're useful kind of heat maps that show where there's a particular concentration at a bit finer scale of tree cover or a lack of trees. So I mentioned we had a previous assessment done back in 2015. So Planet Geo worked to update that methodology to reflect their current practices so we can have more of a direct comparison across the years. And what we found is that there was actually a relatively low decrease in overall tree canopy change from 2015 to 2023. And I'll explain why that is in a moment. A lot of that has to do with, we saw natural tree canopy growth in our existing forested critical areas. And then we saw decreases in other areas where we've experienced development. So looking at that, census block map there, you can see in orange, a lot of the decreases happened in the areas between downtown and kind of Safeway along that primary corridor there. When we looked at tree canopy change by sub area, this also kind of reflects that. You'll see the green areas are where we experience canopy growth, and then the areas in yellow reflect tree canopy losses. So some of the largest were in our West Hill neighborhood and Maywood, just outside of downtown. When we look at it by zoning, we saw the largest decreases in our residential medium districts, which again kind of reflects the higher density allowances and where we've seen more growth, particularly in those areas throughout that corridor. And then again, just looking at that in a bit more detail in the hexagon map, you can kind of see where the largest fluctuations or spots throughout the city have occurred. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to highlight is that our consultant also did a prioritization model or equity analysis to look at demographic data in combination with where we are lacking existing street trees. So what this GIS model considered was a combination of existing tree canopy cover, potential planting areas, and then demographic information like age, education, median household income, poverty rates, unemployment rates as well. And so the areas in the dark blue kind of reflect the highest priority areas. And this is just a useful tool as we look at, okay, where might we want to prioritize resources or new plantings to go from? Census block group, yes. Any questions about the tree canopy assessment before I kind of open it up for our more targeted discussion questions?
I have a couple of questions. One, that's an interesting map, and it's based on people, not watershed.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I think that I looked at old data. I did research on and I think it must have pulled out of the 2016 study. It said that our right-of-way is 27% of our total land area, and has 23% of the tree canopy. Does that sound like old data, or is that?
We did break down the tree canopy data by ownership, which I can't remember if I included in y'all's packet or not, but we do have those numbers. So I'm happy to share that out. I would have to, look back at what the 2015 numbers and what our most recent data shows.
Okay. I love these maps. I was kind of wishing it's not a request, but I was kind of wishing it was those plastic sheets where you could overlay and see, different groups and see where they fell together. I was having to use my imagination and make that happen. There was one, I think you showed us the map on suitability for planting things. And I saw on this map, get to it. Or maybe I won't. Page 131 is what I have. No, it's not. At any rate, it made a comment about wetlands, page 140, that wetlands weren't suitable for planting, and I thought, were they referring to like standing, water or running water? Because hemlocks and cedars love wet roots.
Yeah, typically that was either like existing water or wetlands or areas where we may just not want to disturb naturally occurring vegetation.
Okay.
I think our surface waters team has definitely identified riparian buffers that may need additional plantings or things of that nature. But in terms of this particular kind of suitability analysis, we kind of factored that out.
Okay, and I have one more question, then I'll yield the floor. And this also must be from the, thank you for that, 2016, it might be data from the data, conflicted generational language there. It might be from the 2016 study that said that, that 21% of City of Bothell is considered PPA, possible planting area. And would that be opportunities for us to look at, if it's 21% for expanding our tree canopy, would that be something that we would be looking at?
Yeah, so I think the difference between the last study and this one is we did incorporate some new data. So like the existing easements or some of the critical areas or environmental constraints weren't factored into that previous study. So I think that's why we see a lower percentage coming out of this updated one.
Okay. But in theory, if it's a PPA, a possible planting area for vegetation, we could consider that as a way to up our tree canopy.
Potentially. It's complicated because a lot of this is, private land or land that, we don't have direct influence over, but it could be land that we encourage people to do new plantings on through programs like tree giveaways or other incentives.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation, later down the road, but incentivizing putting trees in would be a great idea. Okay, thank you.
Can you clarify when you say UGA in these maps? Is that just the unincorporated Bothell portions, or is that everything within the urban growth area, which includes incorporated areas of Bothell?
Yes, so that's just looking at the unincorporated areas outside city limits.
Okay, so we're starting to see discrepancy between unincorporated areas and incorporated areas, and that's just yet another disincentive to incorporating areas outside the city that are experiencing different rates of service. When you talk about, my brain jumps to policy and like, how can we include areas within the UGA in rehabilitating and establishing canopy in areas that don't have it, and especially in areas that we see priorities by census block group. That doesn't necessarily there are areas outside the city that look to be pretty highly prioritized. Would it be policy consideration to include areas within Bothell's UGA, MUGA, in tree incentive programs or in maintenance?
I don't know if we're far enough along yet, but the intent of including the UGA, at least in the tree canopy assessment, was mostly so we will have this data to track in the future. Policy-wise, I think we would prioritize those within city limits first. But if there are ways where we can maybe through tree giveaways or other incentive programs, bring them in and help support, our urban growth area as well, that would be great.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that you were talking about that I'd like more information about maybe in the future is the landowners of areas that have really high canopy coverage. I know I was serving on a grant committee for salmon, Raya 8 salmon recovery watershed. And there is a grant a proposal that came through for Bothell. There's a one family that owns a parcel in a very steeply sloping area of Norway Hill. It's undevelopable, but they need help managing erosion there. And so one of our nonprofits in the city put forward a proposal to help them. And I think that sort of thing, like we don't have working forests anymore in Bothell, but certainly large tracts of land that do have substantial canopy and that are providing public benefits, whether or not they're publicly held. And so I'm also thinking about, how would that information about who owns, what is the land ownership of our canopy, and how can we incentivize and partner with people or identify barriers to maintenance, identify barriers to large properties like the school district that have heat islands because there are no trees on school properties, which feels criminal. So I'm thinking, that would be really helpful information to include, and I'd like to look over that and think about that in terms of policy that we hope to incentivize in the future.
Can I ask a clarifying question? As we are going through the maps, initially you mentioned you're looking at 2023 data, right? But the land use map, is that a 23 land use map, or is it the one we just approved as part of the comp plan in 24?
So the nomenclature is reflective of the most recent name changes, but those are tied to our previous districts. So it still reflects the same districts, just with the new nomenclature.
Okay, because the reason I ask is like I live on West Hill, and West Hill is medium density now. I think it wasn't before. So when we say medium density, we don't have as many trees. The conclusions we're reaching because we're using two different data sets that don't match. But there's something to confirm and double check. That's it. I just want to make sure that we're reaching the right conclusions based on consistent data.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to bring up.
I'll also point out that the residential low and mediums are pretty similar in terms of overall coverage. So I have a question, a couple questions actually. In terms of the unsuitable impervious surfaces, I assume a lot of that is like roads, parking lots, and buildings. Is that public parking, or is that only private parking that is the unsuitable impervious surface? Because I feel like parking lots are an area where we actually could plant trees, and we probably should in a lot of cases because they're just big hunks of concrete.
That is a good question. I believe this is based on our existing impervious layers, which would include existing parking lots, sidewalks, buildings, et cetera.
Okay. I would be very interested in being able to include in the public right-of-way that we can plant in parking where we would rather have trees, and just where are the places we could. I don't think we should say no to those areas just out of hand.
Do we still have code for that, though? Sorry, do we still have code for parking lots, including landscape areas?
We do have design standards for parking areas and certain minimum requirements for landscaping, and that could include trees in many instances. And I think that would also help with our goals to reduce our urban heat island in those parking fields, certainly.
Parking fields, that's a good term. The other question I have is on the UTC by zoning map. I would be really interested if we could take this data and overlay it, either with like number of housing units or population, and see if we could back our way into a like tree canopy consumed by housing unit or tree canopy consumed by person information. Because like, you know, if you look at an area like downtown and they've got, you know, 20% less, you know, tree coverage than a surrounding area, but like 5 times as many people per acre live there. Like, I would love to be able to express this in some sort of data where we can say like, what housing units consume the most trees?
Can I interject a thought on that?
Let them answer, and you'll have a turn as soon as I'm done.
No, I think that's a great suggestion. I was trying to think through in my head how to feasibly go about that, but that's something that we could potentially look into.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Along that line of, you know, tree canopy per person, is that the closer, especially when you're talking about downtown, it sits right on, basically right on the slough. And so the buffer of cooling water down before it gets shot straight into the slough doesn't happen as optimally as it could as far as cooling. So there's a balance that I'm asking for, is that proximity, what's the impact on where stormwater's going, and how do we balance
Certainly
that?
can be a part of the conversation. I'm just looking at the data and just basically what housing consumes the most trees per person or per housing unit or something like that. And like, that doesn't mean that we don't care about, you know, getting water into the waterways, but just a way to know. Like, as we build and we want to conserve trees and we want to plant them, like, what are the ways we can do that where we can allow people to live here and, you know, provide opportunities for our kids and also make sure we're preserving tree canopy as best we can.
Do you happen to have any insight? For this map, I was surprised that mixed use is at 45% and residential low is 41%. Is that, I mean, I'm kind of looking at the blue areas, and is it street trees that are making up a big difference there?
Yeah, some of it is the wonkiness of the boundaries. And so we do have to take the percentages with a bit of a grain of salt. Like, one of the reasons that the downtown numbers in this map by zoning are so much lower than when you look at the downtown sub area as a whole is because it's looking at just the downtown zoning districts and factors out, you know, the campus and some of the natural wetland areas that are closer to the highway corridor. So there is some underlying justification for why some percentages or zones might look different than how we would maybe assume they would.
Yeah, no, it's just fascinating because obviously if you have a store and some residences, that's more parking than just some residences because you have people coming in and out. So I was like, hey, that's like kind of exciting that it's a little bit higher. So however we can like figure out that magic and replicate it everywhere would be really cool.
I think my takeaway on this map is the residential conservation zoning that we've implemented has resulted in a net loss in percent. So something's wrong there. We're not getting the conservation that we were purported to get out of lowering the zoning there. So I think that's a conversation that we might want to have in the future, but that was one of the takeaways of that map that I saw.
Yeah, I know that this could be where the climate change conversation comes into the forestry plan, is that some of our trees that have been here for a very long time are currently threatened. And so I'm wondering, like, of the various causes for why those conservation areas might have experienced loss, like, is perhaps, you know, species being threatened, part of it, or could we understand better where that loss is coming from? And then this sort of is a good segue into the parks and open space. Like, great that it's growing, in terms of, you know, canopy change, and great that we have such really high coverage. I think I saw 62% on another map, which is fantastic. And there's also opportunities for us to possibly increase trees in parks as well. I'm thinking specifically about, you know, Wayne, is that there's the master planning process is kicking off, and at some point I expect we're going to see a lot more trees planted there. And I'm curious about, like, and this is too soon in the process, but as we go forward in this process, to project how many trees maybe are estimated that will be planted there in the future, and how that might, you know, change the overall census of trees and coverage. Same with Shelton View. Like, we currently, that's currently privately owned land or federally owned land, or state-owned land. It's kind of all of it. But someday that might be a city, county park that is public open space, and not counted as private. And so those trees, that's a mature, like, second growth forest at this point. And how do those numbers then impact, like, the overall numbers of trees and that are within our public right of way? And then same with North Creek, and the fact that we can just say our 3 forests is pretty exciting and fantastic, that we are, you know, so blessed to have these areas, and the potential to like convert some of that into trees by planting, by acquisition, and you know, even so, I guess what I'd like to see is, are there projected numbers for changes that are coming to our forests? How does that overall support our goals? Because I don't think we need to look at our forests and say, oh, they already have 62% coverage. That's great. We're just going to, like, not do more there. And when we're talking about prioritization, and based on, you know, if we were to do that overlay of the equity map, you know, is there a forest or potential forest that we might want to prioritize so that we are kind of having the most impact that we possibly can? And then I feel like we've kind of already touched on it, that there will be future recommendations for types of trees that are planted in the future. I know that I would like to see native tree species being prioritized as we look at the different areas of prioritization, and also recognize that some of our native trees are under threat. And so are we looking at current and best science of how to either save and preserve those species or replace them with species that are new natives? And then around the deciduous trees, when I was looking at that list, the conifers are native, but the deciduous trees, generally speaking, are not native. Are there some native deciduous species that could be planted in our prioritization areas? And so, like, these I think are going more towards your overall discussion areas. But when I look at, you know, the direction that I hope this plan goes, those are some of the areas that I'm, you know, the thoughts that I'm having about things. Thank you.
Yeah, that's probably a good segue. I feel like a lot of the most recent comments kind of address the first one of just kind of initial takeaways from the data and priorities you would like to see reflected as we kind of move forward. But yeah, I definitely appreciate those suggestions. It's definitely going to take a comprehensive approach. As you mentioned, yeah, Bothell is very fortunate to have these great natural open spaces. So it's going to take a combination of kind of leveraging those as well as, a right-of-way approach. How do we encourage private property owners to retain their trees, et cetera? So.
I had a thought, and it's kind of, so the third bullet point, we are expecting and sort of obligated to take on a certain amount of growth. I know that when we do when there's a new development, there's a tree inventory and there's a tree plan, but there isn't a lot of teeth behind it, is my understanding. Like there aren't fees that people are paying to cut down the trees. And I'm wondering if we have, under RCW, a way that, okay, if you cut down X tree, you put money into a fund and the city plants a tree where we can plant a tree, like kind of creating an ecosystem to create funds for the trees, and also just acknowledgement that the tree was doing something for the city and then it won't be. And also a way to minimize the amount of trees being cut down, but with the reality that there's a lot of housing that we have to allow to be built, just a way to kind of, there's two paths, both of them involve like growing and keeping the tree canopy. So that would be something I'd be really interested in learning more about.
Yeah, we do have existing tree retention and landscaping requirements as part of our code. But yeah, like you mentioned, to my knowledge, they're not incorporated as part of our impact fee structure currently. So that is one potential approach we could look at to create more, ongoing revenue streams to help plant new trees throughout Bothell.
And I think as I'm talking back through this, I would be okay with some sort of lessening, and I assume there would be options that would come to us if it's like going to be subsidized, deeded, affordable housing forever. Not like MFTEs where it's like for a little while, but like if it's going to be like a habitat home or something as an example, like we don't want to increase that cost of development because it's already hard to get that.
I'm going to jump in here. Along that line, I was part of the discussion on Planning Commission and City Council when we upped tree retention, and what happened when the rubber hit the pavement was very few trees were retained. And I would like retaining trees to be incentivized. People do whoops if they're selling their property, bringing down trees. We have municipalities around us that have tree retention, and bringing down trees, pretty stiff fines if they do it without some thought looking at it. At my house, we have a picture on the wall of my house, which was a little shack at the time, at the turn of the last century. And there were 3 little scraggly Doug firs off to the side. And now those Doug firs are huge. They're huge and they're beautiful. And we've had several arborists come out and working on the longevity of them. Big maples don't have a huge lifespan, but they can live to 200 years, which compared to my lifespan, that's pretty significant. And they return so much more back into the soil. But I would love to see in our planning teeth that requires trees having a priority. I know I sound like a tree hugger, and I'm not. But those trees, once they're down, like a Doug fir, a mature Doug fir, carbon sequesters, another multi-syllable word tonight, tons of carbon. And to take that tree out of the picture of what we're talking about, trying to have a better environment, it can take a century to get that tree to go and replace that tree back. And I understand Doug firs as a street lining tree, maybe not such a prudent idea, but I would love to see, and I think that answers your question citywide. Yes, absolutely. I don't think I finished my thought. The arborists, I've had a couple arborists tell me now 2 things. People in Bothell are upset with the lack of value that we place on trees experientially. They see trees come down and not a serious saving of trees. And then arborists say Bothell in our business does not have a great reputation for saving trees. So I would love to turn that around. So there's that. How would I like to see the street inventory used to guide future planning? That's a discussion, but I definitely want to see that happen. And it'll be interesting to see growth, what's going to actually happen. I think we're in a window where we can be really thoughtful about our setbacks. There are people who don't like setbacks, but that is a place where off of a right-of-way, we can maintain and keep and grow and do all the things as far as cooling stormwater, allowing both trees and lower shrubbery to grow. The aesthetics, the mental health, those are the setbacks should not be viewed as a bad thing. They're a good thing. And if we view as setbacks as having a function, we should find ways to protect those. One question that if you're ever making small talk with this group, Callery pear is not listed in Washington State as an invasive tree, and we have some of those. And my question is there any concern that it will start out competing? And maybe that will end up not being on the list of recommended trees for us. But I saw that was inventoried as part of it.
I could just add to that real quick. Anecdotally, those are the trees that we refer to on the East Coast as Q-tip trees because they look like Q-tips when they're all in bloom.
They do now.
And they are invasive and they crowd out native species from our natural areas.
Okay.
So that is certainly something that we'll want to consider deprioritizing in the
Right.
city. I interrupted Cameron. I think you were probably going to say something. But yeah,
Right.
they are a particular, I have a bone to pick with the Callery pears.
Right. So
We can tell.
so the place
I'm
that we
here for
can first response is in our right of ways, right? And then we can move it beyond that because chances are it's moved into private properties somewhere. So that's interesting. Q-tip trees. That's going to stick with me. So
Aren't those also the stinky trees because they're pollinated by
Yes, they have
flies?
they're very aromatic in the spring, let's say.
Pungent.
Pungent is better, yeah.
And not in a pleasant way.
Jason, are there any other reasons to hate these trees that we need to know about?
I don't have an aversion to pears, by the way. It's just
Okay.
these particular trees.
Yeah, just one other thought is that I know that we are there's repercussions on building up our tree inventory along our right of ways, and I know that trees like children all make messes, and so I know that there's repercussions with those trees, and I appreciate Public Works who's going to have to come along and make sure that the stormwater drains are clear and that sort of thing. So I hope I didn't want to come across as being Pollyanna-ish, that we plant trees and there'll be no consequences. So thank you for doing this.
Can I ask a question? How long does it take to do the inventory?
Our consultant moved pretty quickly. I want to say they began work in February or March and completed 15,000 trees in a matter of a couple of months. So, they move pretty quickly and can, knock out hundreds of trees in a day.
Okay, that's awesome. So what is the 2023 data? Are we going to get an update for 2025? Or is it going to be magic? Are we going to get more up-to-date data as we move forward?
Yeah, so the tree canopy data is really reliant on the National Agriculture data Landsat that comes out, and I believe that's on a 3-year time cycle. So the next one would be, I believe, 2026, when we would have new data to go off of.
Because a lot could happen, or a lot has happened, especially after, say, the pandemic 2020. Development spiked and then it died down, and now it's going to spike again eventually. And so things are going to change. So if we don't have more up-to-date data, then it's 3 years is a very long time period, it seems to me, because especially now that everybody's required to upzone, and then you need to have in 5 years, you need to show some a report card. A lot of things will be happening within those 5 years, right?
We are trying to work with our consultant. We did supply them with the list of projects that are under construction now because we know there has been some tree loss in certain instances. And although we may know on a plan level there's a lot of replacement, the canopy hasn't been established quite yet. So we're trying to get some sort of interim update from 2023, but we're hoping to have a more reliable and frequent update to the canopy assessment now that we will hopefully have the urban forest management plan ready by the end of this year and we'll be able to leverage resources to do that because we have it.
Yeah, but that's a good point. I mean, from 2015 to 2023, we didn't see much of a change, but obviously, with the comp plan updates last year, it is something that we'll have to kind of keep a closer eye on. So, yeah, you raise a good point.
Phew, for a change.
So on one of the slides, there's sort of the potential for 15% additional canopy. And one of the questions here is are we interested in establishing a formal tree canopy goal? And I'm guessing that number is probably going to be between 0 and 15.
I believe how most other jurisdictions go about it is kind of setting it on a percentage scale. So if our existing tree canopy is 44, we never want to go below that or within a certain range. And yeah, to provide a little more context, you can kind of look at it at different scales. So as I mentioned, on the citywide scale, as development occurs, we're going to see some growth in some areas and decreases in others, and it might kind of be balance out. Or you can look at it on a more finer scale, either at maybe the neighborhood level or potentially zoning districts where we have more of a direct tie between the development regs and hard surface limits.
So an example of that might be, oh gosh, can I find the map? In a residential medium, we currently have 39% that we might say we don't want it to fall below 39%. We could get as granular as this type. We need to make either regulations or goals that keep it from going below that goal. Is that sort of what you're saying?
So yeah, really the question for tonight was to be a little bit more high level, and then we can come back with some examples of how other jurisdictions have approached this topic. If it is something of interest, we kind of posed the same question to Planning Commission last week, and their kind of big takeaway was they would like us to focus on quality over quantity necessarily. So making sure that, there's adequate access to open space, or that there's not significant heat islands and people are able to get shade where needed, that type of thing. So there's a bunch of different ways that we could go about trying to meet the needs of our community.
Because that's a very good, it's along the lines, because I don't know, as you were saying, do we go 39%, 44%? I don't know. What's the right number? If we have, we need to, I feel like I need to learn more. But as we go through this process throughout the year and we determine, we need to have, to minimize the heat island index is 25. We need to lower it to 15 because that's the best science says we need to keep it 15. I'm just using random numbers. Then from there, you derive the number of trees you need on tree canopy and coverage and all that stuff. If there's a one-to-one or close correlation between the two, So I feel like I need to learn more, but this is a very good point. If you can help us think through what is the appropriate policy we need to set so that we won't get into the nitty-gritty details and let the professionals determine what the details are, and we just say, here's what the community needs at a very high level, you know?
It's so complicated. I want us to have a good goal, but I want it to be an attainable goal, like just setting a percentage. Or I'm thinking about like, so I'm in the Shelton View sub area. It has a better rating than some, not the best, right? But like I think about my backyard, half of it is septic drain field, right? So if I needed to plant 5 trees, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of, so it's hard for me to support like sub area by sub area, but at the same time, if we don't thoughtfully disperse trees, then it's not doing what we need it to do. So that's a problem for you guys. But these are the things that are on my mind. Sorry. I think the other thing is it's such a loaded conversation because I can think of jurisdictions that have tree codes, and I can think of ones that have tree codes that basically have halted development too. So then that increases the price of housing, which we already have a huge problem with in Bothell. So it's like, how can we kind of meet all the different moments that are happening right now? And I think the other thing that is easy to get lost when we talk about Bothell is cutting down a tree to build a house here saves a lot of trees in like the Snoqualmie Valley and in the mountains and stuff. So it's like we need to be very local, but we also have to understand that we're in the UGA and what that means. And again, these are all problems for you guys to figure out and bring back to us. But so those are kind of the things that as we look at like solutions, like I hope all those different little points can kind of like be part of the background, because I don't think there's a lot of understanding. I need to get the number from her, but Representative Dewar had a great number about like a tree here saves X amount of trees, you know, in the mountains or whatever. And I think that that's an important part of it too. And I also, like, if we can just buy a bunch of trees, like a bulk, like a Costco set of trees, I don't think that the city maybe shops at Costco, but, and Costco business, thank you, Rami, Deputy Mayor, sorry. Like, the more we can just plant, you know, like, that would be great too, like, to see movement. So I want to see movement, I want to see tree preservation. I also don't want it to be, like punitive, like, we're keeping our trees and everybody's still priced out. So that's not great either. So I think the balance there is important, and I think that it'll help us digest it to have a lot of facts about why the proposal is X or Y and how it allows housing, but how it also helps the environment, and just what we're doing sort of in concert with everybody around us, because we also can't, as Bothell, do all the tree saving. Like it's kind of maybe I'll let Councilmember Curd talk to that whole network.
It sounds like you would also like some information around tree consumed per housing unit in the development that we have.
Gosh, Mayor, I sure do.
So that we could actually have some information about that, because I thought the same thing, and Teddy Roosevelt has a great quote. It is conservation means development as much as it does protection. Because when somebody wants to come move here, if we don't build a housing unit for them in Bothell, they move out into the UGA, and we can see through the or the unincorporated areas, and we can see through the data right here that results in development that results in lower tree canopy than it does here in the city. So, I mean, I totally agree with you. We have a responsibility to build the housing that we need and do it in a way that preserves trees. And I think having some data around tree consumed per housing unit would be really useful to help meet that end. I'm going to jump off from there. Cool. I thought so. The tree canopy cover goal. I am interested in this, but as the result of planning and studying, not just like throwing a dart at a dartboard and like hitting a number and saying, there is our goal. Like, so if there's a way we can get to a formal goal, sure. To me, that's less important than doing what we can to make it better. Like, and if we don't exactly know what number we're going to hit, that's fine, as long as we're keeping track of what we're doing and we know what that looks like. So if we do end up setting a goal, I would want it to be a result of planning, like not a, here's the goal and now we go plan. The last one, I don't really know exactly what this is asking, I would like to see street trees planted, and I would like to do it where it makes the most difference. And I assume there's some sort of a prioritization scale that we could apply in terms of like where it's going to make the biggest difference for the most amount of people and go from there. Does that give you some direction on that answer for that question?
I think so. Yeah, I guess the considerations there are like, just making sure that it's worked into new capital projects, our development standards, and then if it's feasible to look at retrofits or installing new street trees, how we prioritize those investments.
Okay. And if we do end up, and I don't believe we're at the development regs portion of this yet, but once we get there, I'll say this again. I want to make sure that we have some sort of ratio of like housing unit per trees. Like if you buy a lot and you want to cut down 10 trees to build 3 housing units, like maybe that's not good. But if you buy a lot and you want to cut down 10 trees to build 50 housing units, like, okay, like that's better. So like I would like some sort of ratio to be involved in that, just to make sure that we're not cutting the same amount of trees for wildly disparate impact. Like I want to get the most impact we can out of the land we have. And I'm clearly interested in the like tree per housing unit ratio.
I really don't have much else to say. It seems like you've gotten some really good feedback on most of the questions. I don't know if there's anything else, Cameron, that you need.
I think that's good direction. And yeah, we can come back with more information and some examples from neighboring jurisdictions so you can have some more context to kind of guide some decision making.
I know you were trying to end the discussion, but that's okay because we're over time now. Let me just come in with a technical thing at 9:30 at night. I wanted to talk a little bit about this third bullet point. How do we balance with growth, et cetera? City of Bothell uses King County's drainage manual, and that is tends to be a more like strict drainage manual for new development, which is why we use it over other drainage manuals in the area. To be careful about my employer. I know that the Department of Ecology's Western Washington manual, which is used by most of the cities in Snohomish County instead of their county manual, it has a special like tree retention bonus for calculating stormwater benefits for projects. And so I think that's a mechanism that's really smart, and it was really well thought out at the state level, and it just wasn't incorporated into the King County's drainage manual for whatever reason. I'd like to get more information about that, and I probably know who to talk to at the city about drainage manuals. But I'm wondering if that could be maybe included in, if we need to group up as a region, and the K4C, King County City Climate Collaboration Consortium, whatever it is, might be a mechanism to kind of maybe band together a little bit and understand how retention works out could be a benefit that can be calculated into the King County Drainage Manual. That might be one way that we can help to balance this, and not only just for our city, but for other cities that use the King County Drainage Manual. So that's one thing that I'm thinking about and that I wanted to bring up here tonight, because I do sit on K4C and I'm going to talk about it there. So sort of as an FYI, and also as I'd like to learn more about this. So if you hear things about it, or if there's people, Boyd, that might know more, I'd love to talk to them about it.
Last call. Okay, never mind. Adjourned.